Intelligent design is a theory which addresses the question about what caused certain features in the natural world to come into existence, along with addressing the question of how did the appearance of design in living systems arise.
And ideas about evolution, but it is challenging the central idea of the neo-Darwinian approach to evolution, which is that things look designed, but they're not really, because a purely undirected process is responsible for that appearance. My theory of intelligent design, the one I've developed in The Signature in the Cell, is challenging another theory of evolution, which also invokes only undirected mechanisms, and that's the theory of chemical evolution. And what chemical evolution attempts to do is explain the origin of the first life and any appearances of design that might be resident in the simplest single-celled organism. And I argue that, yes, there are very impressive appearances of design inside the cell. The most impressive of all is the information-rich DNA molecule and the information processing system that's used in the cell to express that information. And I argue that there are no undirected evolutionary processes that are sufficient to produce that based on what we know from having studied them. And yet there is a cause of that information-rich system of which we know, and that cause is intelligence or mind. That there is a type of cause that we know can produce that key feature of life, and therefore that feature of life is best explained by intelligent design rather than an undirected process.
So basically, intelligent design is not challenging evolution defined as change over time, but the idea that the processes are random and undirected. Also, it is completely scientific and is not like creationism. It is not based on religious texts or documents, even if it does have implications that could support a theistic belief. There is a growing number of skeptics in the science community of evolution. They know that evolution depends on the information in the intricate DNA structure, but there is a question no scientist has been able to answer. Where does that information come from?
This is Earth 4 billion years ago. There was no oxygen in the air. Molten lava flowed into an already poisonous sea. Hard to imagine, but this harsh environment was perfect for nurturing a miracle. Rain washed the necessary chemicals from the air, and lightning and ultraviolet radiation cooked these chemicals into an organic soup. And somehow, when the smoke cleared, there was something new, something amazing. A very, very special molecule with a graceful spiral shape. And it had talent. It could make copies of itself faster than it could be destroyed. This was the origin of life on Earth. And when this molecule learned to protect itself inside cell walls, life began to transform the planet.
This shows a leading theory in the scientific world, that the information crucial for natural selection and evolution came by chance. That given enough time, you would stumble upon the right sequence of DNA for life. Dr. Stephen Meyer will further explain how this is not plausible.
That not every single amino acid combination is functional, but we also know that many of them are. So there's a big question, if you're just kind of trying to assess how likely is it that we'd find a protein by chance with all the amino acids in that prebiotic soup interacting with each other for, say, billions of years. And I give it a lot of time. How likely is it that we'd ever get a protein to arise by chance? Well, imagine you're looking for red marbles in a jar of blue marbles. Well, to know the odds of finding a red marble, you want to know something about the ratio. Is it 1 out of 1,000, or is it 500 out of 1,000? Makes a difference, doesn't it? So I have a colleague who's been interested in the whole question of whether or not life could arise by chance for a long time. His name is Doug Axe. He's a molecular biologist. He did his PhD at Caltech. He worked for 14 years at Cambridge University, and he wanted to find out how common or how rare are the functional sequences of amino acids among the big space of all the possible amino acids there are. And he chose to work on a protein of about 150 amino acids to start to get an answer to this question. Now, what he did is he found that there were indeed many combinations that produced functional proteins. But he also found out that the ratio was very, very small. Essentially, what he was asking was this: for every protein that forms a function, how many combinations of amino acids are there? You kind of get the idea? He's trying to get that marbles to marbles ratio. You know, this is like the red marbles we want and the blue ones that we don't, okay? And he came up with a really amazing number. And it's 10 to the 74 power. Now that seems a little less scary because we just looked at this great big number, but this is still an enormously small probability. In other words, if you think of all the amino acids that there could be as a big haystack, and you start searching around for the functional ones, the ratio of functional ones to non-functional ones is like 1 to 10 to the 74. That's the ratio. So finding a functional protein by chance, just on this calculation, you can see is going to be easy or hard? Pretty hard.
Intelligent design shows how we know life always comes from conscious activity, that someone or something is always behind a creation. Information always comes from an intelligent source. DNA is like a computer, said Bill Gates himself. You could easily interchange parts of a molecular biology journal with a computer engineering journal, said by Richard Dawkins. This is evidence for intelligent design. According to repeated experience, life always comes from something. There's a scientific reasoning process that when multiple competing theories or hypotheses for a historical event are compared, the one that is known to produce the effect in question is the best cause. Charles Lyell himself said it was a basic principle of geology to explain the former changes of the Earth's surface by reference to causes now in operation, which is exactly what intelligent design does. This process of reasoning was created by Charles Darwin himself. He stated, if you're trying to explain an event in the remote past, such as the origin of life or information, you should be looking for a cause that is known to produce the effect in question, and known from a repeated experience. Some may say intelligent design is not a theory, or not even science, which biology teacher Andy Dietrich will explain.
Do you know anything about the theory of intelligent design, and if so, can you expand?
Okay. First of all, it's not a theory because there is no peer-reviewed accepted science to back it up. The intelligent design is a very intriguing hypothesis, but it's completely untestable because with the idea that life is so complex, therefore it had to be created by an intelligent being of some sort. You know, could be a god, could be the holy giraffe, it could be you. Okay, it's a great hypothesis. However, you can't test what could essentially be make-believe. I mean, what if it is the holy giraffe that created life? Where do you find them? Can you call them up? Can you test them? And so that's the major flaw with that concept. It's only probably a small body of scientists, and they're not necessarily scientists. A lot of them are simply philosophers. And it's probably only about 10 people in the academic world that subscribe to that. And I would think maybe only 2 of them you could consider a real scientist with a science degree. Most of them are actually philosophy. So it's a really neat philosophy, and it's a great hypothesis, but you can't test it. So the word theory, I believe, is inappropriate, and it's a neat concept.
However, Dr. Stephen Meyer will show how it is science, and how if you discredit it, you would have to discredit its opponent.
I'll give you an example. In 1993, when Dean Kenyon was in trouble at San Francisco State University for discussing intelligent design in one of his biology classes, some of his critics said, well, intelligent design isn't scientific because the designer is unobservable. You can't see or measure the designer. But this is not a kind of argument to make for anyone who's aware of, for example, theoretical physics or evolutionary biology or molecular biology or any number of fields. In science, we very often infer an unobservable entity as the explanation for facts and evidence that we can observe. So science is often indirectly inferential. You infer from the observable to the unobservable. That's exactly what the theory of intelligent design does. We infer from the observable facts of molecular biology to the unobservable action of a designing intelligence. Evolutionary biology does the same thing. It infers to unobservable past events and processes. So if unobservables are legitimate in some branches of science, then why can't they be legitimate in intelligent design? Or conversely, if you're going to disqualify intelligent design on the basis that it infers an unobservable entity, then on the same basis you ought to disqualify the competing theories or other scientific theories that invoke unobservable realities to explain observable phenomena.
I hope you now have learned about intelligent design and how it is a credible scientific theory, and that you shouldn't always believe something that is taught in your science textbook until you research it for yourself. If you are interested in this topic, check out Dr. Stephen Meyer online at discovery.org or in his book Signature in the Cell.